All right. So are we waiting for the intro or are we live now? Okay. Hey guys. Welcome back to another Council of Fans live stream. And this time around we have even more news from the Lord of the Rings on Prime world. And I am currently here today with the original cast of the Council of Fans. Just missing, of course, Fellowship as it is his birthday, so he will not be joining us today. But please join me in wishing him a wonderful birthday before we start. So, first of all, welcome to Chen. Good to see you again. How are you? Good, good. And then we have Tolkien Tube. How are you?
Doing pretty good. Looking forward to it.
Me too. And finally, we are joined today by Penguin, the elusive Penguin.
Yeah, they seek him here, they seek him there. The Fellowship seeks him everywhere. Is he in heaven or is he in hell? He can't find that little penguin.
Very, very good. All right, so today, guys, as you guys probably already have figured out, we're going to be discussing the Vanity Fair article. And then after that, we have some Weta Workshop news that we're going to be talking about as well. So let's take it away, guys. What do you think?
I think surprise is the primary feeling. Am I right, everybody?
Yes, it's well, I'll go first then if it's everybody's quiet. I feel like the whole thing is just exploded now with the start of the little teaser and then now everything is rolling out. It's very exciting what's happening this Sunday as well. I like the article personally. My initial thoughts were this is an editorial. It feels like an editorial, kind of like the fashion editorials that they make. So the photos are very stylized and they're edited in the way that a lot of magazines would edit their photos fashionably. And that was my first take on it. So, yeah.
Yes, that's a very valuable comment because it's a comment that the people who wrote the article, who later had a Twitter event in which both myself and Fellowship took part, they stressed that these photos are taken by still photographers. They're, as you said, very portraits, very stylized. They're not an indication as to the visual style of the show.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's a different style of both photography. Like, it's important to remember that these pictures aren't actual screenshots of, like, the film. They're not, like, film shots. They're stylized, they're taken, like, they're probably edited very differently as well. So please don't be discouraged by what you see.
Yeah.
Because I don't think it's going to look like that.
Personally, I'm kind of mixed. Some of these photos I really, really like. Some of them, particularly the one with antlers coming out of like some hunters' backs, that's kind of weird. And other things I just don't really like so much.
Yeah, I saw that one. I thought, wait, have some of these people ever actually gone hunting or been outdoors at all? It's just...
Didn't they already release that they were like moose antlers or something, and they were hunting mooses?
Mooses?
Moose?
I think the plural is moose. Me?
Yes, it's
No,
moose.
it's
It's moose. It's moose.
It's moose. Yes. And also, I want to say welcome to Kyle, our magical wizard who is always here, but you cannot see him. We are ever grateful for your following and
just
your
like go ahead. Just like Gandalf, he's the mover and shaker of everything that happens, and
exactly, yes.
Here and this grand quest.
Yes. Right, the voice of God. Yes, he will control everything that we do. We just don't even think ourselves anymore. It's just how it is.
Whatever it is. That's stupid. But yeah.
Yes. Anyway, back to you, Penguin. What were you saying?
I was just kind of commenting about the moose antlers. It's just one of those things where it strikes me as something that, oh yeah, this looks really cool, and then but it's never any thought into any sort of functionality of how this actual works. I deer hunt on occasion, and one of the things people can do with deer antlers is bash them together to try to simulate the sounds of two bucks in rut, and to hopefully attract other bucks so you can shoot them. And I'm like, okay, those are kind of massive. How do you actually? Are these guys just going to run up and collide into each other like a rugby scrum or something like that? Or I don't know. It just kind of seems to go with rule of cool type stuff with little thought into the practicality of it, and that's not something I really appeals to me.
Yeah. I would say those must not be main characters of any kind because they're not played by any actors. By any named actors, they're certainly not named in the caption for the shot. They're described purely as nomad hunters. They're not hobbits as far as I can tell or anything like that. It's just, I don't know what it is, but it does look dumb, yeah.
That's a
very isolated thing. I think it would be, we would be remiss to make too much of that in the grand scheme of things. I think.
Do we have any Canadians in the comments? Of course, there's Kyle, but they can't hear him. How do those moose antlers stack up against the real thing, against real people? I mean, I've only been around elk and white-tailed deer, so.
You have a Norwegian here, and we are famous for riding moose to work when we're not riding polar bears.
I thought those were reindeer. I'm sorry.
No, we do moose as well. I was just gonna say that actually because I was looking at them and I was like, they're a little big. Like normal, like that would come from like moose gigantor, like huge moose. I've never seen moose that big ever.
I have. It's Frendel's moose, but otherwise, yeah.
Yeah.
So could these be hobbits, or excuse me, Harfoots?
Oh, maybe.
Probably not, because if you look at their weapons, they look like metal spears. Or I could be wrong, but especially if they were killing ginormous meese, it probably is metal, which wouldn't really make a lot of sense with hobbits. Not that they didn't have metal, of course. It just would seem a little bit off.
Come on. People hunted mastodons and woolly mammoths to extinction with pointy sticks with rocks on them. So,
but midgets didn't, so.
Yeah, but have you seen those woolly mammoth skeletons? I mean, that's still going to be bigger than a hobbit against a moose. So,
yeah.
Yeah,
I don't know. It's definitely on a different proportion level, regardless of whether they're hobbits or not. They are really, really big. But what they're using them for and what purpose and what they came from, I don't know. But
Let me
could
pull
just
up
be
a quote on hobbits because they've spoken about the hobbits in the kind of after show of it.
Yeah.
Man, where was it?
I also want to say hi to everyone in the chat. I saw Nerd of the Rings. There's a lot of people here. It's very exciting. Good to see that you guys are both excited and concerned, of course. Again, I do want to stress the fact that this is actually an editorial shoot, so it's not actually pictures from what you're going to see in the show.
I'm pretty sure
might be fairly different based on the editing as well.
I mean, aside from the fact that I'm pretty sure there weren't people with cargo pants and green t-shirts and looks like headphones and ball caps in that setting.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure they don't exist in Middle Earth.
But this is an adaptation, not a word for word, translation of the text. So there's wiggle room.
Yeah, a little bit.
It's just a bit of
it could have come from the future, So
yeah, and I think generally people are pretty accepting of differences. When it comes to the lore versus the show.
Mean, you mentioned time travel. I mean, they could have the rights to the Lost Road. I mean, who knows, right?
Yeah. Maybe a couple of other unwritten books.
Exactly. Perhaps unfinished. You mean unfinished?
Both, I guess, really.
Yes.
Probably. How's it going? Did you find it?
Oh, yes, sure, I did. The hobbits are the Harfoots, sorry, are described as woodsmen, nomads. They're a little more wild, quote. But I don't think this is it, because you would think they would go to the trouble of saying that these are hobbits in the caption to the shot. Although I suppose, I don't know.
And I get
I
that
mean,
the
the
race
whole
changing
beard and
hobbits, but
everything.
if those were hobbits, that would be like a complete 180 on like what we know about hobbits, just from Peter Jackson's adaptations, not to mention like the actual lore.
Yes.
Well, they say that
Again,
the article says these critters are satisfyingly hobbit adjacent. So they are a pastoral Harfoot society that thrives on secrecy and evading detection, so they can play out a kind of Rosencrantz and Guildenstern are dead in the margins of the bigger quests. Huh.
For sure, because there's certainly going to be Men of Middle-earth in this, because we know of one. This character, we know of two, actually. One of them would be this character, Halbarad, of Charlie Vickers, who we know is going, we've known for a while, is going to Numenor with Galadriel. We have both a shot of them kind of shipwrecked in a storm, and also a shot of him in what appears to be a Numenorian set afterwards. And Amazon has since identified the picture with the horse-shaped hilt as being this character. And so we're looking into having hobbits because, and the showrunners actually have this reason in the article. What would Middle-earth be without hobbits?
Middle-earth?
Middle-earth.
Yeah.
But, so we have a question from the chat wondering if we can share our thoughts on the compressed timeline and the possibility that Celebrimbor and Isildur might be in the same timeline. So let's talk about that, because I know you guys all have different opinions about this.
I know the aquatic avians.
Why don't we go alphabetically for that? Or
yes.
No, you have a strong opinion of this. I think you should.
Okay, I'll go first. I absolutely hate it. My reasoning is that if Sauron was such a massive apocalyptic level threat that 3,000 years after his demise, that his name is a byline of fear and dread, then shouldn't this guy be around for a little bit longer than, say, a single generation of men?
I see a point. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
I mean, the answer to what do you do with the timeline is you pick one setting, either the early one, and you kind of wrap it up, but leave it open. Sauron's defeated, but pushed back, but not defeated. He's got the rings. You could hint at he's going to start giving these things out, et cetera, and then do a sequel later. Or you do the latter era, and by flashbacks, exposition, dialogue, you establish the scope of that this conflict has been going on for 2,000 years or so primarily between the elves and Sauron. You've got these immortal characters in here. The prospect of a millennial-long war isn't too hard of a thing to buy once you can establish that elves are like, you know what, let's wait and fight when we have a better situation, rather than men who are like, yeah, we gotta fight now, freedom.
Yeah. Definitely, yeah.
Yeah.
I think you mean a millennium-long war.
Probably,
Yes.
yeah. What about you, Tolkien Tube? How do you feel?
Personally, I'm not a huge fan of it, but at the same time, I feel like there's a couple of different ways they could do it, and some of those are obviously a lot better than others, some are a lot worse than others, because they could still make it take up a substantial amount of time, and because I think they probably will be dipping kind of into the third age, at least a little bit, and even if they're not, then it's still possible to have the show last more than just a few hundred years. I don't know if they will be doing that, but they probably could. Because obviously, the Second Age lasts like 3,000 years, and maybe to be fair, like the first 750 aren't really relevant. But if they're just compressing like the other about 2,500 years, they could still have a timeline with about 1,000 years long, or they could just be compressing it in the sense that, like when Gandalf leaves the Shire and then comes back in the Fellowship of the Ring. that there's still a time gap there. They just don't really mention it. They just kind of leave it out, or they could actually allude to a time gap, which would also be totally fine in my opinion.
That's not what they said they're doing, though. They're very explicit that they want this to play within the lifetime of their mortal characters.
See,
and some of the mortal characters aren't even Numenorians, so it's
yes, it's gonna be brief from if the article is anything to go by.
Yeah, that's also the impression that I got from their Twitter discussion later. But I think
if that's
also,
the case, then not a huge fan of that personally.
I don't mind that necessarily because it's kind of a conceit that you have to do if you want to tell both stories. I agree that the better choice would have been to have 2 shows, one for each timeline. But as it is, okay. I would like, still within this single timeline, it would feel like, I don't know, like 2 decades will have passed between season 1, season 5. You know, like the feeling that you sometimes get with certain movies, like biopics especially, when you feel that a really long time has passed. Not just 7 years like in Game of Thrones, but like a long time. So that would still work for me in that sense if it were played like that. We'll have to wait and see.
Yeah. I mean, I agree with all of you guys. I don't know how you can agree with all of you guys at once, but I understand all of your points. The one thing that is concerning for me is that I don't understand how they can squeeze it all into one short lifespan, say Isildur's, because we're going to start with him in his sort of late teens. Like, he's going to be quite young, but it's not going to be that young. He's not going to be a baby. And it's going to be his lifespan that we're going to be seeing because he's there at the end too. How are they going to stretch that for more than one season? How can they possibly keep this so interesting that people will want to pay attention for 8 seasons or even 3 seasons? I don't know. That's the only thing that I am concerned about. But like you said, you can sort of fake it in the timeline by using younger actors early on to portray the leaders and then have like a time jump, for instance, and show them a little bit older. I don't know. Many options there. Yeah, I don't know. I feel like I just have to wait and see before I allow myself.
The way they're condensing it, it just seems rather odd because I mean we've known, at least some of us have known for a while, that Galadriel goes to Numenor in season 1. And the logical reason to my mind is you go to request Numenorian aid against Sauron. And of course, we've also learned that, Numenorians, they really don't like elves at this point. Okay, that really points to the latter era. But now they say, okay, we're trying to do everything, and you're doing that in season 1? So is she seeking aid and she's trying to figure out what's going on? So has Sauron already, she's going to seek for aid, but she's still trying to figure out what's going on, if Sauron's escaped. It just seems, and you haven't even established when the rings are made. It's just, there's a lot that we don't know. And, but it just still seems like that's a very convoluted way to make this.
I actually think the article explains it pretty well. It seems that in the first episode, Galadriel is in that shot of hers in armor where she's falling down, hunting, as the article says, the less servants of Sauron, who had, according to the articles, killed her brother. Thus far, okay. And this could be, I suspect, the same village that we see in other photos in this, and the same as the village set that we have reported on, but that's beside the point at the moment. And then it says she gets a feeling, I'll find the exact quote. Let me find it. And as she's doing that, she's overcome by, quote, an intuition that things are not fixed and that there is still something lurking. And then she goes, to Numenor to call for aid.
Yeah, that's
which
That's
already happened,
basically
you
what
know,
I
in,
just
like,
said.
episode 2. She's already well on her way to Numenor by episode 2. That's all very significant, by the way, because it shows that this idea of a 2-episode, even a 1-episode prologue, is totally a canard, because the main plot is already set into motion within the first episode, much less the second.
So she's on her way to Numenor, but she doesn't know. She's looking for the source of this evil, but she doesn't know what it is. But she's still on her way to Numenor. It seems, and the rings haven't been forged. It just seems rather. They've, unless they just decide to really mess with the sequential order of events, it just seems really messed up.
The rings are made, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of wonder if they're doing the rings. What's the motivation for the rings? Why, in the movies they said, oh, they were made so people could rule each race. Okay, in the books it's something to do with stopping the slow decay of time for the elves, and anyways, regardless of what it was a trap. So where do rings fit into this if they're going heads directly into the whole Numenor?
They are saying that they want to focus on the rings. There's very explicit quotes from the showrunners about this. And they even dropped Celebrimbor and his name, which we've guessed right. It's Charles Edwards. And so that's definitely an important plot element of this. I don't know how soon it will start culminating, though. I presume it will kind of take shape gradually, rather than just getting it over with, because I don't know, I feel like the article is very Galadriel focused, and I don't think that's just the reporting. I think that's very intentional. I think she's like, her quest and stuff is going to take a lot of the screen time in these early episodes.
Well, she has been, she's one of the first characters. She is the first character that has been pushed out and named, and we know the actress. So yes, you're definitely right. Amazon doesn't do anything, it seems, unintentional, unless it's for all the spies and everything. But what they do, they don't do unintentionally. So yes, it would make sense that Galadriel would be a major focus, at least of the first season, I reckon. I don't mind that, but it is confusing. Like the whole forging of the rings. Like if they're gonna focus on that, like they're saying, and the whole series is called the Rings of Power, then when are we gonna? And is Sauron gonna be Anatar or Sauron? And how?
Yes.
Like I don't know. I don't understand it.
It still just seems you go to Numenor to ask for aid or something like that, except there's no real threat there's no clear threat to point to other than a vague premonition. And I know I'm overanalyzing and maybe reading far too much into something, but it's still just okay, this doesn't quite jive up with what we know of the setting.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, there's also the issue with the human characters and their lifespan, I guess, is a bit of a challenge.
Yeah, especially the non-human.
Yeah, Numenorians have
Yeah.
a long lifespan, of course, longer than the average human, but still shorter than an elf. But
and that element of the show is going to be greatly reduced because they can only show like an 80-year time span, or maybe a little bit longer than that.
Which is why my solution was always focus on one era or the other. And if you want to have an elf-centric show, I would say, have a take the risk and do the revolving door of human characters each season. Let us see from the elvish perspective what it's like to be an immortal being in a rapidly changing and even in a Tolkien sense decaying world. That could have been interesting. But when you spend $1 billion on a show, you do safe rather than interesting.
I don't know if that would be that interesting. Okay.
It's not interesting, creative, risky, daring. Better word choice.
Kind of feel like they are taking risks, so I don't know. Like they're taking risks, but they're not taking the risks that we want them to take. Maybe.
Well,
Because it seems so far they have taken a lot of risks with, like,
Yeah.
putting the timeline together. It makes sense from a filmmaking perspective based on the fact that there's a lot of stuff, especially in the Silmarillion and the appendices, that isn't like it's just a line about something that happens and then 100 years later something else happens, so you kind of have to push them together a little bit or find another way to do it, as we've been talking about before, like showing flashbacks or consecutive timelines like in The Witcher.
Well, with The
But
Witcher, the issue was execution. As someone who
yeah,
had no knowledge of the setting, I had no idea what the hell was going on because they never gave any sort of hint that this is what's going on. If they had just said 100 years ago or 50 years or present day or something like that as they went back and forth, it's like, oh, okay, yeah, that makes sense. Or some visual cue,
sometimes they
lighting
didn't
style
say
like in
that.
Memento where the past is in black and
Yeah,
white, it would have worked.
yeah. Well, they
Yeah.
didn't say anything. They just switched, and it was just like you had no idea what was going on. And that didn't really work for people who didn't know. Like, it took me ages to understand that there were two different timelines. And when I finally got it, I was like, oh, okay, this makes sense now. But yeah, so of course, learn from the mistakes, but at the same time, from the filmmaking perspective, it makes sense to push them together a little bit, but maybe not as much as they probably are doing here, from what it
Yeah.
seems in the article. This is only the first look, though, so we don't know that much yet.
I think though they're gonna crunch it up more because another one of the mortal Middle-earth maiden characters is this Bronwyn. Great name, by the way, very Tolkien-like.
Yeah, I like
Played
Bronwyn.
by Nazanin Boniadi,
Yeah,
who is that's a good picture of there. That's one. Yeah, she's an apothecary in a village of. It says the Southlands of Middle-earth. I presume it's like not really too much south, like possibly where Gondor would later be or something, because it looks quite large. And she has an affair with what? Yeah, sure. The town itself is called Tir Harad, like southern outpost. Nice little idyllic town. And she has an affair with. We knew the character would have an affair. She's a widow. She has a son,
yeah,
played by Tyrone Muhafidin, and she has an affair with Ismail Cruz Cordova as I totally forgot his name. Elrond there. Yeah, sure. As a Sylvan elf of some kind, either from Lorien or for the Woodland Realm. We're not really sure. And so they're gonna do the whole show in short enough time that they don't have to turn Nazanin Boniadi into an 80-year-old. I mean, come on.
yeah.
Yeah.
That
Or
would
she
be
dies
interesting.
something, which I don't think she will.
Well, like I said, they're just making what I would call the safe choices. They're putting hobbits in here. They're doing lots
They're
of
not
things.
exactly making just safe choices because yeah, they've got hobbits, but they've got multicultural hobbits, which is like obviously blowing up like the whole internet because people
and you have to remember in the primary circles that these people are running in, that the risky choice would be to have them all white.
But
Yeah.
at the same time, I feel like the majority of people probably don't want that. I know we're getting kind of political here, but from what I've seen, like the vast majority of people don't want that, except for maybe if you go on Twitter, to be honest.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, depending on how you look at it, like, some might see it as risky choices, some might see it as the choices that make sense in this day and age. And I think they're doing a combination of both. They're trying to accommodate to everyone at the
Yeah.
same time, which is a challenge considering the source material is not from this time. It was written at an entirely different time when there was a lot of different views and a lot of different way of thinking. So it can understand they're having a challenge trying to accommodate for everyone. And we have to
Yeah.
remember that a lot of the people they're trying to accommodate for aren't Tolkien. Like they're television viewers. They like fantasy, but they're not as big of fans as we may be potentially. So
Well,
But
I
at the
guess I'm
same
I'm
time,
I'm,
like,
diff- I'm different. I'm not a fantasy fan. I'm Tolkien is probably the only other, by and large, the only fantasy setting that I've actually cared for beyond Skyrim. Yeah, that's a fun game. Yeah, I enjoyed playing Dragon Age. Whatever. So when I see something like that, I'm kind of like the random cosmopolitan diversity. I think, okay, this is a pre-industrial setting where by and large people lived in groups of people that looked very similar to themselves, and and those people who lived on the other side of the river who might look a little bit different, might speak a little different, are incredibly, generally pretty dangerous. Like the whole concept of diversity is something that you really only see in the West and in the West and Europe, the Americas, and that's it's throughout history it never really existed. Most people existed and lived among people that looked like them. So when I see a diverse pre-industrial setting, I'm just kind of like, I'm not. No, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying this would break the show for me. It doesn't, but it just kind of makes me wonder, how did these really different looking people get here? In other settings, don't care. Make James Bond black. I think Idris Elba would be fantastic as a Bond. I know I butchered his name, but there's in other settings, it doesn't matter.
but it's not really just a concept of black people that. Well, I mean, there are some racist people and some people who just.
Oh, sure,
don't know much
absolutely.
about Tolkien, and that's pretty horrible. But I think it's mostly the fact that. Okay, I kind of lost track of what I was gonna say. We'll come back to that later.
anyway, I do want to say to everyone here that it is important to think about, even if you're angry, even if you're upset, even if your feelings are hurt, think about what you're writing and saying on the internet. Freedom of speech is a thing, of course. You are entirely entitled to your opinions, but there are real people working behind this show, and there are real actors. There's everybody, cast and crew, have put so much work into this and effort. Words hurt and it's painful, and I am genuinely concerned for the mental health and well-being of these poor actors reading some of the comments. So please just
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of the comments have been just beyond the pale. If you have a point, try to always think, okay, am I going to convince anyone with what I'm saying? And if the answer is no, either shut up or revise your messaging.
And ad hominem's usually not the way to get anything done. But back to what I was saying, I remembered it. So, it's obviously not that you can't have black and diverse people in Middle Earth. There's most certainly a place for it because Tolkien did write them into the story. But I think most people are upset because, not only should hobbits not be in the Second Age and they shouldn't be multicultural or even, much darker of skin or African American or Jamaican. Although personally, if Tolkien said something, I'm fine if Amazon takes that to an extreme, just because I'm a little bit lenient like that. But it's the fact that if Amazon wanted to show diversity, they could have done it in ways more respectful to the canon, and which made the same amount of sense. Like I said, the Blue Wizards, the Haradrim, the Druidine, and maybe not all those people groups were exactly the ones that they wanted to show, but it's most certainly a way to show diversity in a more respectful way to the canon.
I was talking to you, the thing that people seem most upset about, there were maybe two things, but the one I'm thinking of is the absence of dwarf women hair, which I find hilarious.
No, but she does have it though. I saw a picture on Twitter where they zoomed in, and she does have beard.
That is barely a beard.
It's enough to look awkward, but not enough to make the people who really care about the canon happy. Honestly, I think they should have just done no beard at all.
You either should have had to go hardcore into the dwarf women are unmistakable from men, and I think that'd be kind of interesting in an age of where where a lot of trans people are basically saying, "Hey, we're here, accept it, deal with it." To have a race of people in which gender is basically meaningless because you can't tell them apart, but instead they get slapped a very thin, wispy. I almost want to call pubescent beard on her and said, "See, look, our dwarves have beards." I'm like, yeah, that's either have no beard or go all out. But this whole that doesn't work for me.
But this is just one dwarf, though. Like, we don't know what the rest of them look like. Like, she could be different because she's a princess or about to become queen. I don't know. We don't know. And this is also stills of something. Like, it is not... they might not even look like this. Like, they might look somewhat like this, but they might not look entirely like this. We don't know. And I don't know. I mean, I think she looks fantastic.
I agree.
My opinion. And
well, your opinion is bad, and you should feel bad. I'm just kidding.
That's terrible. Be nice, Penguin. Be nice.
I said I'm just kidding. It's like saying with all due respect, when someone says that, immediately they're about to be as disrespectful as possible.
Oh yeah. I also want to say I think Owain Arthur looks like he looks so kind. He looks. I love these pictures, but they remind me of a high fashion editorial. Like, they are so edited. It's not going to look like this. It's going to be grittier. It's going to be darker. It's going to be dirtier, messier. These guys clearly had a bath before they did their photo shoot. It's not.
I mean, we even have a picture of Morfydd Clark taking a bath, right?
You're right. Exactly. Yeah. Preparing for a photo shoot.
And as for the look of the dwarf, I mean, I think he looks terrible. But I just don't like dwarfs in general. So I hope that Elrond wakes up and kills them all in the middle of the show. I mean, fingers crossed, right?
Okay,
so you're not Team Dwarf then.
Back to the dwarf thing. Like, his nose is not that big, which I was a little bit happy about. Personally, I think they could have done with normal noses. I would have been happy with that, or a little bit bigger than normal. But especially relative to some of the other characters, I thought they did the dwarf pretty well, as long as he's not like just another drunk Irish person, which would be a little bit dumb, in my opinion.
Yeah. He reminds me of the other dwarves from The Hobbit. And I thought they were fine, and I love the actors, and I think he fits perfectly.
Yeah, some of them I like, but at the same time, I think the whole drunk Irish or drunk Scot thing kind of takes away from their character, because then they'll like just be comedic relief. That happens like Gimli and so like some of the other dwarves. Although I get like you can't have every single dwarf in The Hobbit be a main character, because you can't have like 24 main characters.
They took my boy Gimli from a warrior poet to burping asthmatic. Oh.
Yeah.
So what about the hair for Ismail's character, and also for
too short.
I don't really like either.
You're not a fan?
Yeah, I mean, overall, I think like some of these photos are really good. It's just like the hair in particular. It's just, I don't know, like the one with Ismail Cruz Cordova. I like that whole shot. It all looks very, very good to me, except for the hair. The hair just looks off. And same with the one of Robert Aramayo as Elrond. It just, I don't know, it looks like he's got a pretty modern or relatively modern hairstyle. And like, is he using hair gel in this? Because as far as I could tell, they use some less pleasant things to gel their hair back in the day.
What was the name of James Earl Jones' character on Conan the Barbarian?
Also Doom.
Yes. And I thought that was a very interesting look. And you've got, this black man with this long, straight, like flowing hair. And I think he had contacts in to give him green eyes. It just kind of gave this idea of this long lost, civilization or group of men, of which he was, one of the few remaining people of it. It just kind of felt like a bit of an ancient world. I'm just curious why they didn't do like something like that for Ismail.
Yeah, I actually find Arameo's hairstyle fine. I don't have a huge problem with that. That's okay to me. It's a good look for Arameo. Chris Cordovez is way too short. Like way too short. Otherwise, I like his look.
Yes.
But his hair is way too short.
Yeah, my
I
problem
would
is
have
Really
loved
nice
to
shot.
see him with long hair just to see what he would
Yeah.
look like because it would be such an interesting aesthetic for him. For both of them. They look really like the I don't know, have we been conditioned to think of elves as people with really long hair and braids? Is that I don't know, have we been?
No, I think so. I think so. Typically the elves are noted for being fair of face and bright of eyes and beautiful hair or something like that. And it's really hard to comment and say, "Man, you've got beautiful hair" when it's only a few inches long or
Yeah.
less.
And to be fair to
There
Amazon,
is
it
a
could
nice
also
shot
be
of
that.
Arameo that I really like, of him and Galadriel,
Mm,
which is
This
nice
hair-
because
sorry.
This hair
Oh,
might have
okay.
been cut too. Like we don't really know the story behind it. And wasn't there a leak a while ago saying that like some elves were and basically gulags? Because if that's the case, then like cutting your hair, especially in older times, was like a sign of shame or shaming someone else, or
Was it Dane? Which dwarf was noted to have torn his beard? Was it Thrain, Thorin? One of those. They tore their beard when one of them got killed by Azog, and so they tore. It's like the Bible. Oh, they tore their clothes and threw on sackcloth and ashes.
Mm-hmm.
Now,
there is a shot of Robert Arameo and Galadriel in Linden that I really like.
So the way I'm looking at that shot, and my issue with Arameo is not his hair. Something about his face just doesn't sit right with me, and
Not nice.
no, it just looks like a punchable face, if that makes any sense to anyone out there. And so I see that picture of Galadriel, and
he does look like a pretty boy, to be honest.
There's pretty boys, and something about him, like, man, I just.
I mean, elves are pretty boys. Like they are. I don't know. I don't know what else to say.
I don't know. Which I think of an elf, and I think something. I've said that Glorfindel. I've always pictured him as looking like Brad Pitt in Troy. Extremely pretty, but also there's a sense of power to him, athleticism. Minus the whole broody, just assholeness of him. Basically, Brad Pitt in Troy, but smiling. And a lot of these elves that they've selected, I mean, they just look pretty, but where's the physicality? They don't have to look big. I'm just saying they just don't look athletic.
But they don't have to. Like, did you see Orlando Bloom as Legolas?
He was still athletic looking. I mean, he was broader in shoulders. It looked like he had a little bit of muscle mass to him. He looked like he could do a pull up. Whereas this guy, it could just be the two photographs we see. He just looks.
He looks very political. Like he looks very political in these. Like, let me ask you this: how would you guys feel if this was like back in the day and they did a Vanity Fair article like this with glorified, glossy pictures of Orlando Bloom before you saw him in the movie? Now you got to remember, in the movie, he was portrayed as a badass. Like he did a lot of badass stuff, and it was cool to watch. So naturally, we think of him that way because we've been conditioned. Here in this, Mario looks like it's very political, and he's being described as this politically ambitious elf as well. And this is a fashion editorial, so this is only like fancy. We're not seeing him in any battle circumstance whatsoever here. So he might still be.
Well, to answer your question, as a 16-year-old, I'm now thinking, what would I be doing reading Vanity Fair at that age? Jumping back to 2000. What was it, 2000 or 2001?
Right, I would be 13. I would probably be reading Vanity Fair if Orlando Bloom was in it, to be honest.
Yeah. But I will say, you made a good point about him being politically minded. And it's a very good point because there's an added piece, an addendum of sorts, on Vanity Fair's Twitter, where they said what his first political mission is, and it's to let me find the quote.
Control F. It's the easy way. Command F for you Apple guys out there.
He's mending the relationship between his people and the dwarves of Khazad-dûm.
Yeah.
Oh.
So that's his purpose.
And Kyle, I bet you guys know what happens next, don't you?
Oh,
We do.
we? All right.
Yeah, we alluded to this discussion a couple of months ago in season 1 of the Council of Fans.
I cannot remember this.
It's one of those scene ideas that sounds dumb when you hear about it without any context, but when you see it in the still, you're like, oh, this works. To use one of Hen's favorite movies, Braveheart. Imagine if I told you that William Wallace and a buddy have a rock throwing contest. You're like, what the hell? That's dumb. That's William Wallace we're talking about. But in the context of the movie, it lets you see how William Wallace has changed, how his friend hasn't, etc., and it makes for a compelling scene. Then the English show up and say, well, I'm a lord, so I get to have sex with your wife. Sorry, bud.
Yes, we did. We did say that I want to be in Moria. That's basically the gist of the whole thing, because I see that we've confused Nikki no end. So yeah, we did say that everyone would visit Moria, so this tracks.
Yeah.
And the thing that I like about the shot with him and Galadriel is that because the shot of Galadriel in armor, which is really cool armor by the way, because that shot is in the top of the article, I think people were like, oh, they're gonna make Galadriel a super warrior all the time and stuff. But no, she's in like 4 or 5 different pictures in this, and only one of them is in armor, and the rest of them are like, Galadriel. Especially the one with them.
Well, in one of them, who knows if she's even wearing anything? I mean, she could be taking a bath for all we know.
I think that's probably the shipwreck scene. Who knows? I mean, maybe
a
ship with no clothes on.
It's called me being a smartass. You should know that by now.
Mysterious.
Maybe I've spent too much time on Twitter.
You know what? That was your first mistake.
Yeah, you're right. And back to what I don't know who was talking about it, but Elrond and Robert Arameo, he doesn't look too skinny there. Yeah, he does look like a pretty boy, but that's really just his face. And I mean,
well, I never called him a pretty boy. I just said he looks,
I did.
Is there something about it that I just think, man, there's just something about that looks punchable. I'm not saying I'm going to walk up to the guy, and if someone said that about me, I'd say, well, you know what, to each their own, but okay.
And I've got to say, that's like his face looks pretty manicured, for lack of better words, and his hair is like, not exactly gruff or anything, but like his forearms and his biceps
editorial.
and his eyes look.
It's like Vanity Fair came to Middle Earth and styled these people and took photos of them. Like that's the thing. Like that's the theme of this shoot.
You know what?
Editorial.
I'm gonna speak from a status of the purist. As I don't spend much time on Twitter, but I'm looking at these pictures and I am upset that the white lady of the Noldor is not wearing a white dress. I mean, what the hell?
Oh, she's been wearing white for forever.
They're saving it for later. Like they don't want to give away everything at once. This is the first look, right?
I'm being a smartass again. FYI.
Too much Twitter, Nikki.
Oh yes. I spend too much time on social media in general. I need to just stop. But yes.
What else? That's really it, isn't it? Like, what else? Like, we had... This confirms also Maxine Baudry as a Isildur. So, pat on the back, we were, right.
Yeah, I'm sorry, you don't get a pat on the back. I reject this news for 6 months until it was confirmed 15 different ways. I'm just messing with you again. You're good. I'm just on a roll today. Feel free to mute me, Kyle.
And really, what else? I don't know. I think the point is well taken that it's a Vanity Fair editorial. It's very prettified and gussied up. I think that's
it's interesting. Cool. They haven't, because we don't know who the people with the moose antler thingies are.
Yes.
It's a very elf and dwarven heavy editorial, there's not really any pictures. There's not too many pictures of hobbits. There's no pictures. We don't know who these people are, and there is also like not many pictures of. We know there are so many more people in this cast. So where are they? What are we gonna?
Well, I think they're going this way for a number of reasons. One, you've got it's focused primarily on Galadriel and Elrond. And who are the two people that the general audience would know the most who was in the other media? Those two people. So of course it's gonna focus on them. And there's also a little bit of me that thinks, okay, most of our insights into the production have been on the Numenorian side. So we've kind of said, oh, here's Isildur, here's Elendil, here's all these other Numenorian characters. So I'm not saying Amazon changed their marketing plans because of us, but I think that information was out there. But I mean, we're talking 99% focusing on what people know, and maybe 1% what we did had an influence.
I mean, I have this theory that the Game of Thrones ending was changed to what it ended up being because they were trying so hard to not do all of the fan theories. But that's just me. I mean, we're a lot of people with a lot of really strong opinions, and we're very vocal about it. So they might and that's why it's important to think about what you say as well and how you say it, regardless of how you feel. Just have a think about how the other person or the person that you're talking about is going to perceive it or read it, or because it's painful. So yeah, it's important to think about these things. Yes.
But I think they probably had this, and they had a Numenorian one, and they had to pick between the two, and they picked this. And from talking in the Twitter event afterwards, they did say that they have more coming next week. So presumably,
there is a teaser trailer coming out on. Yeah, so I'm sure there's going to be more stuff coming out first. But if you're going to kick off your big marketing, focus on highlight the two elements that people would recognize the most, which is Elrond, Galadriel, and then they also spent a lot of time talking about Moria. And because does Linden ring a bell? Not really. Does Numenor? I mean, I think they mentioned Numenor twice in the movies. We only know Isildur as the asshole who didn't throw the ring away. Again, if you've read the books, this is, you should know all this stuff. But if you're coming at this from the movies, who are going to be the primary audience that you have to get in the door, then yeah, you start with what they know. You draw connections to what they know.
Yes.
Yeah. So I feel like we've talked about the article now, and at the beginning of this, I did promise we were going to talk a little bit about the Weta Workshop as well. Now, I don't know much about this, but I've been told that Ken does. So do you want to take it away?
I was looking at stuff on the show in general, as I often do, and I can't even remember how I stumbled into it, but I stumbled into someone's Facebook post. It's not someone exactly, it's a business of some sort that deals with prosthetics. And they said that at the moment that the pictures were released, they spoke about having had the pleasure to fly once more to New Zealand and work for Weta Workshop on the highly anticipated Amazon Prime TV adaptation of The Lord of the Rings. And I was like, well, jackpot, there's Weta Workshop. Because we've known that Weta Digital is involved for a while, and they've even posted it officially on the website. But Weta Workshop, which is much more significant because not only do they make things, but they also do the designs. They paint and sculpt designs and concept art. And to know that they're involved is very, very significant.
Yeah, we've all seen or I'm assuming most of us have seen the behind the scenes from the extended DVDs and all of that. I think it's a very, very exciting thing if they are involved, and it seems like they are, because hopefully that means a lot more real stuff and a lot less CGI. Fingers crossed. because we like that. Well, I like that. And Weta Workshop is fantastic. They're super talented. I loved what they did for the Lord of the Rings. So if they're involved, that's really, really good news.
And they also should have known better though, because a few months back, there had been a very extensive interview. This was before the production even left New Zealand. A very extensive interview with I think someone from the New Zealand authorities who worked with the show, about all the economical subsidies and stuff. And they had said that Weta Workshop, along with Weta Digital, are expected to catch in on the production. So we should have known better. And there are a couple of Weta Workshop employees that are credited as working on the show on IMDb. So we should have known better, but it's nice to have something a little bit stronger like this. I think this is pretty conclusive.
Curious what their
New Zealand work with Weta Workshop, tag Weta Workshop. Yeah.
I'm curious about how their involvement is going, what it's going to look like in the future. When sure there will continue to be a need for prosthetics and so forth, but the production is now on the other side of the planet.
Hey, that's
Don't you think they would just move them like a branch? They wouldn't. Like, I mean, they moved other cast and crew across the world to New Zealand, so why not move Weta Workshop to the UK, right?
Move work, yeah. I think that's true, but another reason that mitigates the change is that this show isn't predicated on a journey. So it's not like in the movies were a journey, and each movie took you to new places and therefore required new designs. This show is much more likely to sort of base itself in a couple of settlements, in Linden, in Numenor, in Moria, a couple of others. And you'll basically be visiting them over and over again and kind of having them as stages for the drama. And so there won't be these new places every season to be designed, you see.
You would think, but what they use the word quest. Let's see. They used it once in the plural, quests. Okay, they just used it once. In the they said, talking about the Hobbits story in the margins of the bigger quests. I thought that was interesting. It's plural. Yeah, I mean, it just kind of...
minor quests, like Galadriel's quest to Numenor.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a quest in the literal sense, but you think, okay, an epic journey from A to B with A to Z with all these other letters of the alphabet happening along the way.
Sometimes all you need is an epic backdrop and a character in whatever they're wearing and whatever they're bringing with them. Other times you need like a massive set, So it varies. It's like when they're climbing the mountains in the Lord of the Rings. Like you don't really need many props because you have that, and then they're in Moria. You need the props because there's no place in the world that looks like the Mines of Moria. So I think there will be a variation, and they will probably collaborate with different companies as well. But the fact that Weta Workshop is even involved to begin with, I think is a good sign. And I think also it is likely that they will move at least a small team from Weta Workshop across. And we have the virtual option, like they could be discussing things across worlds through what like we're doing now. So, I mean, there are many options, but I think this is positive.
Can I be a wet blanket for a moment?
No.
Well, where I'm going with this is Weta Workshop is based out of New Zealand, right?
Yes.
Do they have, and New Zealand, I mean, many people produce movies there, but it is a much smaller, let's say, place than Hollywood, or there's film studios in the UK. So if you're doing something in New Zealand, you probably are going to be using Weta Workshop anyway. So their involvement I didn't greet that as excitement. I just said, "Oh yeah, it makes a logical choice. You're in New Zealand, you use them. When you're in one particular city, you use your local vendors for the most part, right? So if you're in the UK, you're more likely, if they had set up shop in Scotland like they had been reported as doing in 2018. Oh, seems like forever ago. Well, you're going to use local Scottish people for that same role. So.
Yes.
I mean,
Again,
sure, they have a fantastic reputation for Lord of the Rings, but and that's well deserved. But they're also kind of the only game in town.
They definitely will be
Oh,
using
okay.
multiple vendors too. I know they've got a DE&I playbook, which, amongst other things, means that they have to seek at least 3 bids from vendors or suppliers who come from, I'll just say, various backgrounds and such. So again, this might not necessarily be applied just with like VFX and practical effects, but they're going to have to use a variety of vendors.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think again the important point is that Weta Workshop don't just make prosthetics and models and weapons. They do the design. That's what matters. And that's something that they don't necessarily need to be in the UK to do
No.
concept
Yeah.
art.
Yeah.
Yes. And that's really what important. Who then takes those designs and makes them on the set is, I think, much less significant. It's the designs themselves that matter. And those are going to still be done by Weta Workshop. Unless,
and of course the miniatures as well. Like you can make the miniatures and they can be filmed in a studio there.
I don't know if they'll bother with miniatures, but yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
I mean, I'm trying to be positive. I all in all, I'm still pleasantly surprised and excited to see that there is stuff happening and that marketing is happening. I'm both nervous and excited for the potential release of a trailer during the Super Bowl. But yeah, we will see. Just again, I cannot stress the fact enough that you guys please be respectful and be kind and choose your words with care because there is real people behind this project who really care about it, as we've seen from the actors as well. Just be kind. And I think also that we're gonna leave it at that because we've been going for about an hour, and that's how long our lives usually go for when we don't have the errors that seem to be happening. We don't know if it's Amazon, we don't know if it's Jeff, but it's someone trying to sabotage. Anyway, thank you so much, Chen, for coming on live today. It's been a pleasure. And thank you, Tolkien Tube.
Yes, it was a lot of fun being on. Amazon, please sponsor me. And viewers, you can check out my links in the description. I'm mostly a YouTuber. Also got a Twitter account, so yeah.
And Penguin, thank you.
Hey, thanks for having me and putting up with me.
Always a pleasure. Any of you guys want to share where people can find you apart from Tolkien Tube? No? Well, I'm going to thank myself. Well, you can find me on YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, anywhere. All the links are present online. And also, thank you so much to our wizard, Kyle.
Yes.
Much appreciated. Thank you, as always. And thank you to the chat. We really appreciate you guys coming to support us, coming to listen. Please join me in wishing Fellowship an amazing birthday once again. And we will be back. I will not be, but the team will be back tomorrow and on Sunday. So this is a massive weekend for Fellowship of Fans. Join the hype. Let's do this, guys. And thank you for watching.